the old bungalow on Sinhagad Road. A group of college friends in Pune, Anjali, Rohan, Meera and Samir, were notorious for exploring haunted places around the city. Their latest obsession was an abandoned British-era bungalow on Sinhagad Road, known among locals for strange occurrences. They had heard stories of flickering lights, echoing voices, and a woman seen staring out the window late at night. One Friday evening, they decided to see it for themselves. They set out just after sunset, trekking up the hill as dusk settled into darkness. The bungalow was hidden behind a thick wall of trees, crumbling with age and covered in moss. It was eerily quiet, and a strange chill hung in the air despite the humid Pune evening. Inside, the air was stale, smelling of dust and mildew. The friends walked through the rooms, their flashlights casting long, distorted shadows on the peeling walls. Old furniture lay scattered, covered in cobwebs, and the silence was broken only by the creak of their footsteps. The house seemed empty at first, but it wasn't long before they noticed small things. A cold draft that seemed to come from nowhere, the faint sound of shuffling feet when no one was moving. They reached the main hall, where a grand staircase led to the second floor. Meera suggested they split up to explore, and despite their nerves, they agreed. Anjali and Rohan stayed downstairs, while Meera and Samir took the staircase. Upstairs, Meera noticed a strange portrait on the wall, an old faded painting of a woman in a traditional sari, her eyes dark and lifeless. She felt as if the woman's gaze followed her, growing colder and more intense the longer she looked. Samir, trying to lighten the mood, joked about it, but even he seemed uneasy. Suddenly, they heard Anjali screaming from below. Meera and Samir raced down the stairs to find her and Rohan staring at the entrance in horror. There, etched into the wooden door, were scratch marks, fresh, jagged lines that hadn't been there when they entered. Then, they heard a faint sound echoing from the upper floor, like soft, slow footsteps. Without thinking, they all turned toward the staircase, and that's when they saw her. At the top of the stairs stood a woman, her face hidden behind a curtain of long black hair. Her body was still, but her head seemed to tilt ever so slightly, as if she were watching them, waiting. The air grew unbearably cold, and the friends stood frozen, paralyzed by fear. Slowly, the woman began descending, each step heavy and deliberate. Rohan broke the silence, shouting, "Run!" The spell broke, and they bolted out of the bungalow, sprinting down the hill without looking back. They didn't stop until they reached the bottom, gasping for breath and unable to speak. When they finally composed themselves, Samir pulled out his phone, trying to check the time, but it had died. They all checked their phones. Each one was dead, though they had been fully charged earlier that night. The next morning, they decided to investigate further, telling a local shopkeeper about the woman they had seen. The shopkeeper's face turned pale. That bungalow belonged to a woman who went mad after her husband died in an accident, he explained. They say her spirit is still there, waiting for him to return. After that night, the friends never went back to Sinhagad Road, but sometimes, when they're out late, they swear they see a figure at the top of the hill, watching, waiting for her next visitors. This story plays on Pune's rich historical setting and the legend-filled hills that surround it, perfect for a late-night tale with a twist of eerie Pune atmosphere.